on this groundbreaking episode of Mythbusters.
Oh man, someone here didn't flush.
Adam and Jamie get down and dirty.
Whoa, Rose.
As they tackle two viewer tales about toilets. First, there's hot air. As the guys try to solve a classic hand-drying dilemma.
I do this in every airport I get to.
Then they flush out which communal cubicle is the most contaminated.
Oh, this is nasty.
Meanwhile, Grant, Carrie, and Tori
That's an earthquake coming.
drop, cover, and hold. As they find out if, during the shake of a quake,
This is terrifying!
the best survival solution is to dive for the doorway.
Can the Mythbusters bring down the house, or can they bring down the house?
Who are the Mythbusters? Adam Savage
That's science.
and Jamie Hyneman.
I'm ready.
Between them, more than 30 years of special effects experience. Together with Grant Imahara,
Oh, it's growing.
Carrie Byron,
Always makes me feel dangerous.
and Tori Belleci.
There's something you don't see every day.
They don't just tell the myths, they put them to the test. First up, it's time to get down and dirty.
Hyneman, sorry about that.
I won't ask what kept you.
Yeah, call of nature. But get this, while I was sitting there, I was thinking of a couple of toilet stories that we could test.
Seriously?
Yeah. The first one involves those blow dryer jet dryers in public restrooms that are supposed to be super sanitary.
Yeah.
There's a myth going around that they are in fact less sanitary than a regular old paper towel.
Huh.
The second one involves testing which stall in a public restroom is in fact the cleanest.
Great. We get to spend time in a public restroom. Do you mind if we start with a hand dryer first?
Not at all.
There are over 12 million hand dryers in the US alone. So can they really be a hygiene horror show? Well, the theory to this myth is twofold. First, dryers supposedly purge fewer pathogens than their paper counterparts. And second, they can also fan a fog of microbe miasma that's a contamination catastrophe. But will this myth be hot air?
This story doesn't make any sense to me.
How so?
Well, if you're drying your hands, that implies that you've washed them.
Absolutely.
And if you've washed your hands, you've removed all the bacteria. So whether a drying method is cleaner than another is irrelevant.
Right, I see your point, but only some people use the full soap and water for washing their hands. Some people, they just get their hands wet before drying them up. Why don't we test both of those and see which is the proper worst case scenario for testing hand towel versus dryer?
Okay, that works.
So how do people wash their hands? Well, to my way of thinking, there are three things people do in a restroom regarding washing their hands. The first is they pretend to wash their hands. The second thing people do is get their hands wet, but use no soap. The third thing people do, and the thing we all know you should do, is wash their hands with soap. So first things first, Jamie and I are gonna wash our hands using each of those techniques and compare the bacterial loads to see if Jamie is in fact right. Does washing your hands in soap and water leave them completely clean?
And first to go is Adam, who after each cleaning custom, hands over to the Hyneman.
I'm swabbing Adam's hands with a soy-based growth medium. So if there's any bacteria on his hands, I'm gonna find it.
This is the last one.
Yeah, let's plate them and bake them.
Okay. Well, I've done my round of hand washing. Now it's Jamie's turn. Perfect.
Not a drop of water.
Once Jamie's also swabbed for science, it's time for some germination.
Okay, Adam first. Process is pretty simple. We've collected our samples. We've spread them evenly across soy agar in a petri dish, and we've put them in an incubator. We're gonna let them sit there overnight. We'll come in the morning and see what we've got.
It may not look like much, but with soy to savor at a temperature of 37 Celsius, this is a pathogen paradise. And sure enough, 24 hours later,
Let's see what kind of surprise we have.
All right, well, the soap wash,
Nada.
frickin' nothing.
yep, the soap plate's great, which cannot be said of the water wash.
How come your bacteria are bigger than mine?
Sometimes that's just the way it works.
And as for the no wash,
Whoa, gross. Given that this myth isn't about the efficacy of washing your hands, it's about a worst-case scenario for bacterial spread, I vote in the interest of the worst-case scenario that we go with water rinsing.
Yeah.
So the whole reason we were doing this test is because Jamie suggested if you wash your hands with soap and water and it eliminates all the bacteria, who cares about the drying method? There's no bacteria to be more or less clean with. And it turns out he's right. Look at that. Washing our hands with soap and water yielded no bacteria that we could find on this Petri dish. But when we only pretended to wash our hands, when we rinsed them in water but used no soap, check out what we found. Ah! So this is the method that we are going to use to test the cleanliness of air dryers versus paper towels.
and the first task for that test is to rustle up a restroom.
Well, this is a nice, clean, white space.
It is. I imagine that this is exactly what it's like inside your brain. Perfectly blank slate, except for the one thing that you're thinking about. Am I right?
Pretty much.
Shall we get to work?
Yeah. We're here to test whether air-powered hand dryers spread germs around a bathroom more than paper towels do. And so, of course, to test that, we need a bathroom. One bathroom coming up.
It's all hands on deck as the guys set up an experimental setup.
We call this hiding the crime. See? Ugly seam, pretty seam. It's just that easy.
With a sink
Perfect.
and a room divider, a blow dryer, and a towel dispenser,
It works.
they're banged up bathrooms ready to lend this myth a hand.
Yeah, that was the last paper towel. Looks like you're gonna have to get some more. Those hands look pretty wet. I don't want to tell your business, but that was the last paper towel, yeah. How you doing?
Next up, a myth that's shaken, not stirred.
Okay, so I've got a myth that's ready to rumble.
All right, what is it?
The myth is that the best place to be in an earthquake when it hits your house is in the doorway.
Yeah, that's what they've been telling us since we were kids. But I mean, isn't the new technique to get under something and hang on?
True, that is the current advice, but some fans still believe the doorway is the best place to be, and that is what they want us to put to the test.
All right, sounds like it's time to shake for science. No, not that kind of shake. Oh, that's what I'm talking about.
There's no doubt that earthquakes can literally rock your world.
Oh my God, we're having an earthquake. Wait a minute. Hold on.
But when the earth moves, should you really dive for the doorway, or will this myth be at fault?
All right, so I love this story, but I foresee a couple of problems.
Okay, like what?
Well, first of all, doesn't the answer depend on the type of house you're in, how it was constructed, how old it is?
True, so why don't we test this on a couple of different kinds of homes? First, a newer, sort of wooden-style house, and then maybe an older masonry one.
Okay, fair enough. But then there's a second problem. We can't just sit around waiting for an earthquake to happen.
Well, what we could do is find one of those giant shake tables and see if they'd let us borrow it.
You know what? I know just the place.
Now, we are testing the myth that during an earthquake, it is best to stand in a door jamb in a building. Now, ever since I was a kid growing up in California, that is what they told us. But I don't know if that's true. So we are here at the California Academy of Sciences, and they are going to let us use their earthquake shake table so we can get to the bottom of this myth. Let's hope we don't break it.
Yeah, breaking this museum masterpiece would be bad news. So first, the guys go in for a trial tremor.
All right, you guys ready for an earthquake? Oh my God!
Look at the lamp! Ah! I want out of here!
This is terrifying.
Thanks to a battery of air bladders, the shake table can simulate San Francisco's 1906 nightmare. The 15th most energetic earthquake in U.S. history. But given its engineering excellence,
Save the bobbleheads!
Are they really going to let the Mythbusters meddle with it?
Holy moly! We're all gonna die!
Well, since you already have a shake table, we were talking about making a brick and mortar style building as well as a wood structure building. Do you think maybe we could just use yours and shake them till they fall down?
Well, it sounds like a great idea, but this is actually a working museum, so maybe you have to build your own or something.
Okay. So how does your shake table imitate the forces of an earthquake?
Well, we don't do the Z plane, which is up and down. We actually do the X and the Y direction. And we do that movement because that's the strongest motion in an earthquake.
All right, well, thank you very much for all the information. I
thank
think we
you.
got a lot of building to do.
That's great.
So we have visited the California Academy of Sciences earthquake table, and it is awesome.
We're all gonna die!
And basically, we're gonna copy it, but make it our own Mythbusters style. The first step with that is to build a model. And that is with all of these cylinders are gonna be pushing and pulling just to see what we're getting ourselves into.
With a build as mind-boggling as this,
Look, I know it looks like a mess right now, but it's totally gonna make sense in a minute.
Grant's starting with a proof of concept. And if this 2x2 model shakes,
Perfect.
rattles, and rolls, the guys will cue the heavy metal as they attempt to build its way bigger brother.
It's a fine adjustment tool.
A bigger brother that'll measure 11 by 13, weigh 5,000 pounds, and be capable of shaking down 2 built-up houses.
So our earthquake shake table concept model is complete. Now what this is a load-bearing platform supported by casters. It's got actuators in the X and Y direction to shake it. What we're interested in is what happens to the house after it's been collapsed when subjected to earthquake magnitude forces. Kind of like this. I'd call that about a 10.
There's no doubt that they're shrimp shakers the business. But next, it's time to build the beast. Can the humble hand dryer really create a pathogen paradise, or is this myth bathroom baloney? To find out, the Mythbusters have rustled up the recipe.
I do this in every airport I get to. Ah, yeah.
And it's almost time to get cooking.
The myth is that drying your hands with an air blower is less sanitary than using a paper towel. In order to test this, we'll be putting a bacterial marker on the hands of each of our 16 volunteers and then swabbing them both before and after they use each of these devices. If the myth is true, we should see far more bacteria on their hands after air drying than after using the paper towel.
Indeed. But before that,
First, we need to make a clean space.
there's one final secret setup.
We're cleaning our bathroom with a mixture of water and ethyl alcohol, which will not leave any residue that could harm any bacteria. This is for a test we'll do after we've finished with all of our test subjects, but more on that later.
Okay, so more on that later.
Done! What's taking so long, Slowpoke?
With the volunteers to hand, next Jamie's special brew can be uncorked.
This is a culture of E. coli bacteria. Now, E. coli can sometimes be harmful, but this particular strain was designed by a lab that's completely harmless. Okay. All our participants will be immersing their hands in this stuff, and it'll create a consistent bacterial load for all our testing.
It's all hands to the pump.
Now, flip them.
As Jamie applies the same amount in the same way to get the same bacterial load.
Excellent.
And with that, the mother of all washing wipeouts can begin. And here's how.
Let's do a little editing trick. Give me a screen between my two hands. Perfect. Now, each of our test subjects will go through the exact same set of procedures. First, they will get their hands sprayed with a bacterial marker, and they'll let them air dry. Then they come to me, and I swab their hand. Then they go and wash their hand, and I swab it again after they've washed. Then they go and dry their hand, and I swab them one last time. They'll go through this with both the paper towels and the air dryer. At the end, we'll take all 96 of our swabbed samples back to the shop, culture them, and find out where the bacteria really ends up.
That's the plan. So it's time to get this sanitary showdown on the road.
All right, first person, please.
Volunteer 1 steps up to get swabbed,
Thank you.
then washed,
1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000.
then swabbed again.
Left hand again, if you would, sir.
Next, he heads for some towel traction, which is followed by one last swab.
Science.
Next.
And so the pattern repeats
Thank you very much.
as all 16 volunteers get sampled before washing,
Excellent.
after washing,
Thank you.
and after towel drying.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
To say it's a little repetitive is an understatement.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you.
But to really see a pathogen pattern, a solid sample is essential.
48 pieces of data down.
Nice work.
Thank you.
With 48 swabs, the guys are exactly halfway through. So it's onwards and upwards.
Here we go again.
With the bacterial load reloaded, the entire swab mob hits the washroom once more.
Very strange. Our test subject group seems to have developed its own ritual.
Like last time,
Next.
the volunteers swab, wash, and swab. Before, this time, turning blue with the hand dryer. But will this different drying device really let microbes make hay?
Number 16. There it is.
Well, with the final test finally done, the guys have a hunch.
You know, I am noticing something sort of interesting.
I'm wondering if it's the same thing that I've been noticing.
Well, I'm smelling the odor of the growth medium a lot more now because the air dryer's aerosolizing this stuff, I think. And I didn't smell it before with the paper towels.
I'll tell you what I've been noticing. I notice a lot more wet hands. See, it takes longer to dry your hands with the air dryer, but people aren't taking that extra time. Thus, they're coming back here, and their hands are wetter than with the towels.
Both the smell and the clammy hands suggest that the dryer is not eliminating pathogens from people's palms. But what does the data say?
Here it is. All of our data gathered from 16 test subjects on both the air dryer and the paper towels. 96 pieces of data in all. And this isn't everything that we're gathering today. You remember how earlier I said that we were cleaning the bathrooms for a reason that would become apparent later? Well, later is happening right now.
Because we're not just concerned about spreading bacteria on people's hands. We're also going to test the immediate environment around where they dry them to see what, if any, bacterial spread there is there as well.
So Adam gets down and dirty with one final swabbing sequence
But there's a lot right here.
as he collects 10 samples from identical points in each bathroom.
So after all that repetitive work, what did we end up with? Well, one answer is 116 test tubes full of growth medium and probably some bacteria. But another answer is an answer. An answer to the original question, which is more sanitary, the air dryer or the paper towels. That answer is inherent in these 116 tubes right now. We've encoded that answer into a live medium, and we will decode it by growing that live medium. How cool is that? Well, let's get these back to the shop and start growing some bacteria.
I've got my incubator warm and ready to go.
That sounded creepy. Let's go.
24 hours later, with bacteria sprouting like there's no tomorrow,
There's a lot.
the guys count every colony
59, 60, 61. Lamb.
in every sample
Here we go.
before they're finally ready to wrap up the results.
All right. The great hand towel versus air dryer debate. The results are in. Are you ready to hear them?
Sure.
Pretty stunning. When we had our test subjects dry their hands with the air dryer, they were able to reduce the bacterial load on their hands by 23%.
Okay.
But when we had the individuals dry their hands with the hand towel, they were able to reduce the bacterial load on their hands by 71%, almost 3 times as much.
That's amazing. But that's for the individual. What about for the environment?
Well, when we swabbed the area around the air dryer, we found a total of 41 colonies of bacteria. When we swabbed the area around the hand towel, we found 3.
which yet again indicates that the air dryer is spreading more bacteria than the hand towels.
Indeed, they do. This myth is totally confirmed. The claims of the air dryers just don't hold up.
It's just hot air.
When an earthquake quivers, are you better off decamping in the doorway? Well, to find out, the Mythbusters must first conjure up their little shake table's bigger brother.
The small scale is done. Now it is time to move on to the full scale shake table. Now the construction of this is gonna be a bit of a challenge.
Looking good, looking good.
The dimensions will be 11 by 13 feet, but we're gonna be using square steel tube with half-inch thick wall.
I think we're good.
This stuff is strong. It has to be strong because once we start building buildings on top of it and shaking them down, this thing has to withstand thousands of pounds of force.
Their steel is clearly the real deal.
There's about 5,000 pounds of steel here, and according to my back, that's a lot.
And once the top side's welded tight, cue the forklift foxtrot.
Moving around the shake table frame is so nerve-wracking.
Stop. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, what's the pucker factor?
Not only is this thing 5,000 pounds, and we're moving it around with our forklifts in our shop, which has 0 room,
This is probably one of the scariest things we've done in a while, huh?
but I don't want to kill Tori.
Slow down, Carrie.
All of the enamel on the top of my teeth is gone. Let's get to welding.
With the frame finally flipped out, the guys make short work of a long job. And yet still, the build has barely just begun.
Did you hear that? That's an earthquake coming.
We've now completed the heavy-duty steel structure, which is going to be the base of our shake table. Now we need to build what shakes it. For that, we're building 8 monuments. These are pneumatic springs or air springs. Usually they're used in semi-truck trailer beds so that it can balance loads or provide some extra spring. For us, they're going to be on the edges of our shake table, and they're going to provide 10,000 pounds of force each. With 8 of them, that's 80,000 pounds. That ought to shake things up.
Now this one's finished. We only got 7 more to go.
These no-nonsense pneumatics will help shake the quake back and forth.
It's like an erector set. A giant erector set.
And once they're secured into place,
Nothing more satisfying than drilling through concrete.
and attached to the frame,
Oh, Susanna, don't you cry for me.
the guys have one more trick up their sleeves.
Oh, these are the air casters. This is the most exciting part. Remember the shake table at the museum? Their shake table was able to move on an XY plane. Ours is gonna be even better. Ours is gonna be able to move on a Z plane as well. How? With these. These are Arago air casters, and they're able to lift 8,000 pounds each. Now we're gonna have 6 of them, 4 in each corner and 2 in the middle. These are gonna allow our shake table to not only move side to side, forwards and backwards, but also up and down. So let's face it, if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing.
Indeed. And the one thing that still needs overdoing
Gotta show 'em who's boss.
is to put in place the plumbing.
This is the biggest air hose I have ever seen.
I've seen bigger.
A process that, like the entire build, takes longer than 2 shakes.
It's pretty manly work. Putting the man into manifold.
By nightfall, it's finally ready for a test. And here's how.
I think we got a shot at Dancing with the Stars, I really do. After hours of designing and days of heavy building, the earthquake table is finally done. Now behind me is a fleet of air compressors. Now it's important that we have a lot of air for this table to work, and I'll show you why. Now, compressed air will be moving through these hoses into this manifold where it will be distributed to 6 separate air casters. Now, once those air casters inflate, the whole table will lift up and it will actually ride on a cushion of air.
Our second source of air is going to come through these hoses, through these pipes, and to these air bladders. They're going to control the shaking so the table stops quaking.
Now, all the valves that control the air bladders are going to this bank of relays, which is going to this microcontroller and this computer. We can control each of those valves separately so that we can get exactly the magnitude of earthquake that we need. You want to see it? Fire up the compressors! It's time to put this sucker to work.
With the air on, the guys are going to kick off
Charging the air casters.
with the up-down test.
Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. It's working!
First impressions are good. Second impressions
It's like an earthquake!
are even better.
It's working!
Dude, all right, so that's the up and down.
All right, let's see what the side to side can do.
Okay, you guys ready? 3, 2, 1! The 6.0, the awesome scale!
Ain't that the truth? With the air casters controlling the up and down and the pneumatic cylinders pumping iron back and forth, the biggest build in Mythbusters history is ready to rock.
This is an amazing success.
Now all we need to do is build a house.
And then see if we can shake it down. This is awesome.
To test the myth that a doorway is the best place to stand during an earthquake, we've built a shake table. It's working great. It's giving us a really magnificent earthquake. Now all we need to do is build a house and shake it down. Too much fun.
There's no restroom respite because next up, is it all for one and one for all?
Next up in Toilet Trouble, we have a myth that in a bathroom, a public restroom of multiple stalls, the stall closest to the door is going to be the cleanest and also least used stall.
Why would that be the case?
I personally avoid that stall because I'm assuming everyone else has jumped in it and it's probably filthy.
Well, I'd imagine some people also want more privacy, so they'd go to the other end of the bathroom.
In either case, the myth is the same, that people, for whatever reason, are avoiding the stall closest to the door, and thus it unexpectedly is a bastion of cleanliness in a public restroom.
Well, I guess it's time to get down and dirty.
Nice pun.
Restroom routines waver widely. But is it true that we all tend to steer clear of stall 1, making it the freshest faucet of all?
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I think the plan here is pretty straightforward. Can you guess what I'm thinking?
Find a public restroom, stake it out, count how many people use what stalls?
Yes, but we'd also use some of our bacteriological testing knowledge to measure how dirty each of the stalls is at the end of our test.
Sure, why not?
How hard could that be?
Over the years we've been doing Mythbusters, we've been granted access to props and locations to do our experiments that, well, when we first started would have seemed completely impossible. We got a 747 that we were allowed to get behind to test the power of hurricane force winds. We were even allowed to sink a boat in the protected wildlife sanctuary of Monterey Bay and then to raise it back up again with 30,000 ping pong balls. But finding a public restroom with 4 stalls that we could film and test in has proven to be one of the biggest bears we've ever had to tackle. Luckily, we believe we found the bathroom, and it's here at the Cal Maritime Academy. Not only is it one of the best maritime academies in the country, but they've got a bathroom that they're willing to let us film in, and I think it's going to be perfect.
It's not often a public bathroom can be perfect, but for this stall tall tale, this restroom rules.
Now, please bear with us. There's only so many interesting ways you can film a restroom, but the basic myth is this, that in a public restroom, stall number 1, that is the one closest to the door, is both the cleanest and the least used because of 2 assumptions people make about human behavior.
The first is that people assume because of its proximity to the door, the first stall is the most used and therefore the dirtiest, and therefore they pick another stall.
The second assumption people make is that people will avoid the first stall and go all the way to the end because they want privacy. Auditory privacy.
Either way, the net result is the same. Is the first stall the least used and therefore the cleanest? That's what we're going to test.
And to do just that, the guys need 2 dollops of data that they'll collect over 4 days. Bathroom bacteria and U-bend usage.
Now, throughout the course of our test, we're going to need to know how many people are using which stalls in this bathroom. How are we going to do that? I mean, we could be in here with a clipboard just counting it off, but I think that would be creepy, don't you? We're going to avoid that with a mechanical solution. I'm going to install it now. Whoops.
A mechanical door clicker is a simple solution for logging toilet traffic.
Perfect.
And with all 4 installed on the stalls, next, it's time to cut the crap.
I win!
As Adam and Jamie, along with some mean cleaners, give the bathroom a bacteria blitz.
For us to record the amount of bacteria in each stall, we need to start with a clean slate. And that's what all this cleaning is about. Eliminating traces of bacteria so any colonies we find at the end of the experiment have all grown during the test and not before.
That's the theory. And once the restroom is a pathogen-free zone, the experiment can begin.
That's it. All the counters are zeroed.
Well, everything's been swabbed. Let's get out of here.
All right.
So, let the crapping commence.
So after a monster build, we're finally ready to start testing.
Yes, and you know what? I found some research that indicates the die for the doorway part might have come from older construction where they didn't have the benefit of modern earthquake proofing.
Well, that does make a lot of sense. I mean, the doorway would be the strongest part of the construction.
Exactly.
All right, why don't we proceed like this? We'll build an old-time masonry building and then a modern-day wood structure. We'll stick Buster and his buddies in there. We'll stick one of them in the door jamb and see what happens when they get all shook up.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so by now you know that we are testing the myth that standing in a doorway is the best place to be during an earthquake. Now, we learned from the California Academy of Sciences that the origin of this myth is possibly in unreinforced masonry buildings. Now, it's a common type of building around the world as well as in historical buildings in the United States. So we found ourselves some skilled masons. They're going to build a structure on our shake table, and once it's cured, we're going to try to shake it down.
Yep, for test 1, the Mythbusters don't need to be movers or shakers.
Between the lines.
Because this house is being time-lapsed into place by experts. And once the concrete's left to cure for 3 whole weeks, it's time to decorate.
Wow, I really like what you did with the place, Grant. You really made this a home.
For the subsequent shakedown, it's important that the inside is as realistic as the outside.
Quack, damn you. Am I missing an eyebrow? This is why we can't have anything nice.
And that means furniture, knickknacks, and mannequins.
I'm placing 3 mannequins around the room, 1 underneath the table, 1 just standing in the room, and 1 standing in the doorway. Now, for this myth to be confirmed, the one in the doorway is going to fare the best in the quake. And to assess relative damage, we have an accelerometer in the head, and I'm placing shock watches around their bodies.
They may not look like much, but these pink missing links,
Very muscular, rock-hard abs.
thanks to their sensors, will register any impact or crushing injury in the subsequent shakedown.
So I'm no mason, but I did observe how this building was being built, and it conforms to how you would have built something in pre-code olden days, which means that there are strong points and weak points. Now, these corners are one of the strongest parts of the building. There's rebar going all the way up to the ceiling with poured concrete. Same thing for the door, all the way around the arch. That's all solid. So by the end of this, my personal opinion is that the only thing left standing is going to be this wall with the front door.
So Grant's money is on the myth. But before the Earth moves,
Excuse me.
there's one final piece of the puzzle. Some U.S. Geological Survey sensors that will record the magnitude of their tremor. And once wired up, it's time to shake, baby, shake.
All right, we are set to shake the building down. Okay. 5, 4,
3, 2, 1. Oh. Wow. The chandelier is going crazy. Wow. That is a lot of power.
Right from the get-go, their quake is quivering up, down, left, and right with the same power as San Francisco's 1906 shock. And yet this olden days style building is holding firm. But not for long.
Above the window! Above the window! Move it out! Oh, crap! Oh, look at that!
After just 15 seconds, the sidewall is already in pieces. And mannequin 1 is also down for the count.
Oh, my God! That is terrifying.
Moments later, the back wall. And then the other side wall follows suit.
Whoa!
This is terrifying.
I think it's gonna go.
It's quake carnage everywhere, except, incredibly, for the doorway.
All right, so far, though, the doorway does seem to be the safest place to stand.
Yeah, no, I mean, given all your other choices in this situation, I think the doorway's got it.
Even after a longer than typical 2 minutes of quake and shake, the doorway still holds firm. Until
Kill the air! Kill the air!
the machine itself gives up. And with that, the conclusions are quick to follow.
Well, I think it's pretty clear. I mean, the only wall still standing is the one with the door, and the only mannequin that didn't sustain any injury is the one standing in the doorway.
Yeah, he looks all right, other than being whacked by the door a few times. I mean, I think we can call this one plausible for this kind of construction.
Yeah, it's totally plausible. So this is a pretty fantastic result. As I expected, this front wall with the doorway stayed intact. Everybody inside the house, totally devastated. The guy in the doorway, totally fine. But there are 2 caveats. The first one is that this is only good for a certain amount of time. If your earthquake lasts for several minutes, that wall's gonna come down too. Second thing, there aren't many buildings built like this these days. Most of them have modern seismic codes in mind. In fact, you watching at home, you're probably in a modern building. So that's what we gotta do next, build a modern building.
Welcome back. Mythbusters has been attempting to answer the age-old conundrum of which bathroom stall in a public restroom is the cleanest, which is the dirtiest, and which gets the most use. In order to test this, we have commandeered the bathroom behind me by cleaning it within an inch of its life, adding clicker counters on each of the 4 stall doors, and we plan to come back in a few days to test how much bacteria built up over the time the public was using it. But now, it's time for people to come in and just start using it like they normally would. So, come on, public! Time to use the bathroom.
Although the toilet is now open for business, users are a little reticent. But they needn't worry.
Now, normally we'd have a whole bunch of cameras everywhere to record the process of our experiment. But, well, in this particular case, it might not be such a good idea. And anyway, why would you want to watch what happens in here? I certainly wouldn't.
Me either. So let's stick with some cryptic close-ups, a time-lapse montage, and some inappropriate interviews.
Here comes another member of the public.
Howdy, what's your name?
My name's Brad.
Brad, mind if I ask you a personal question?
Sure, why not?
Okay, did you use one of the stalls in there when you went in?
I did.
Okay, which one did you use? Which one are you normally inclined to use?
Number 2?
Number 2?
Yes,
the
sir.
second one?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you very much, sir.
No problem.
All right.
Have a nice day.
So it's 1 point to stall 2, and there's more to come.
Did you, in fact, use one of the stalls in there?
Yeah.
Okay. Which one did you use?
I like the one in the back, the corner one.
In fact, throughout day 1, nobody used stall 1 at all.
I choose the 3rd one. The 4th one, the big one. Number 3. I use the one far on the left as you walk in.
We are taking a break from our regularly scheduled programming in the men's room to visit the ladies' room, where we discovered, to our astonishment, not 1 or 2, but 3 freaking couches in this joint. Now I know why they always go to the bathroom together.
And why they take so long.
You can write to us about this sexist talk later, but first, I'm actually kind of interested in the interviews we did outside the restroom.
Yeah, it was a little creepy, but they all seem to value their privacy more than anything else.
Yeah, and seek out the farthest stall from the door, like I do.
Me, I don't care.
You're all just like, hear me.
Day 2 at the gents, and business is booming. As this myth gets flushed out over 96 hours, which, with one final farewell, come to a sticky end.
Well, are you ready?
I am. It's been 4 days. Let's re-swap this joint.
Remember, there's 2 bits of data they need to collect.
Oh, man, someone here didn't flush. That's gross.
First is the bacterial load of each stall.
Oh, this is nasty.
Which this time round is not quite as much fun.
The last time we did this, it was perfectly clean. Now it's disgusting.
And second is the door clicker data, which is much easier on the eye.
What'd you get?
Well, I can tell you, but I can't tell them. They're gonna have to wait till we get back to the shop. See, even if I turned it around and showed it to you, it would still be blurred.
That's right, it's television.
Let's go.
Well, it's been 3 days since we started our toilet experiment. What do we got? Wow, nice graphics.
We actually got some great numbers. Nobody messed with our counters, and starting with the stall farthest from the door, stall number 4, we had a total of 24 users. Stall number 3, 34 users. There's a few more for stall number 2 at 38, but stall number 1 had a total of 23 users.
Well, that's the least number of uses. How does that correlate with the bacterial count?
Here is where it actually gets really interesting. We counted the number of colonies from all of our swabs. Starting again at number 4, the number was 231, moving in closer, a little more, 290, 267, stall number 1, 162. It's not only the least used, but it is by far the cleanest of all 4 stalls.
Wow, that's definitive.
Yeah, this one is completely confirmed.
Well, looks like in future I'll be using stall number 1.
I'm still gonna stick with stall number 4.
In earthquake emergency,
Oh my God!
the door just scored.
The only mannequin that didn't sustain any injury is the one standing in the doorway.
So as spectacular as that result was, does it mean that diving for the doorway is the best thing to do? Well, not necessarily. You see, simply houses just aren't built this way in the US anymore. I mean, they used to be, which may be where the myth came from, but with modern building codes, is the doorway still the best place to be? Time to build something a little more up to date.
Here comes the house.
So for their up-to-date shaking setup, Grant's got wood.
It's amazing what you can buy online these days.
He's montaging a timber frame house that's being constructed strictly to code, which has Grant thinking we'll see a very different result.
So this is our wood frame house, built to modern building codes. It's got studs every 16 inches, it's lagged into the floor, the roof trusses have hurricane ties. Now, one reason why a wood frame house might fare better than a masonry house is when a brick wall flexes, the mortar simply pops out and the wall crumbles and fails. With a wood frame house, it can flex equally in both directions, so it can absorb some of that energy and probably fare better. Now, the doorway might be the strongest part of a masonry house, but my money is on the wood frame house being equally strong all around.
That's the theory. And once the roof and walls are up, that just leaves the finishing touches.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our house.
The windows and the all-important door.
Good night.
Next comes the furniture,
Ooh, be careful with that. It's been in the family for years.
which is identical to that used in the masonry house.
Totally not narcissistic at all.
Then in go the USGS sensors, whose owner is adamant that this myth is at fault.
Okay, Dave, so what do you think about the myth that the doorway is the safest place to stand in an earthquake?
I wouldn't do it. The USGS advocates that you drop, cover, and hold on, which means drop under a sturdy table or a desk and hold on to it so that you don't separate from the table.
And if that advice is true,
dudes in surf shorts, totally normal.
Then the under-the-table dummy should do better than the doormat.
Good luck.
But who will be the last man standing this time?
This is an 8.0 magnitude earthquake with a wooden frame 2-code house.
Starting the sequence. 3, 2, 1.
Immediately, the table roars into life.
Look at the chandelier! The chandelier is swinging around the room!
And it's not long before the bookcase takes out mannequin 1.
Oh my God, everything is falling over!
While the inside may be imploding, the guy under the table is injury-free, which cannot be said of the doorman.
That dude got spanked!
Yeah, the door just smacked him in the butt.
A full 2 minutes of spanking later, and the house stays standing strong.
The construction's way too good!
So the guys decide to come up for air.
Okay, shut it down! Shut it down! So we shook our house at an 8.0, and you can see it's still standing. It's built to modern building codes, which have seismic concerns in mind. Now, inside of the house, it's a different story. There's stuff everywhere. But the important thing is that the guy under the table did just as well as the guy standing in the doorway, and in some ways, actually better. See, the table provided shielding, whereas the guy in the doorway, he got smacked several times with the door as it swung around. But we're not done yet. We're gonna shake it one more time.
So, unlike the Masonry house, this modern marvel is made of sterner stuff, which means the duck, cover, and hold technique is so far the safest. But what will happen when they crank the machine to the max?
This is Quake Villa with a 2-code wooden structure house.
3, 2, 1.
With the air pressure firing on all cylinders, the earthquake hits a 9.5, making it the strongest quake ever recorded. Yet the house still stands, which is more than can be said for the doorman. Unable to maintain stability, he's hit the deck and is out for the count.
That's not good.
Which means the only merry mannequin is the crouching tiger. But perhaps the biggest surprise is that the built-to-code building appears to be unbreakable.
So as you can see, the modern building codes are that way for a reason. This house, which we built in a day and a half, stood up to a 9.5 earthquake, enough to bring down an unreinforced masonry house.
It's a feat of engineering for sure. But with 2 different results for their 2 different houses, the guys head home for the wrap-up.
Okay, so how are we gonna call this one?
Well, given that the myth is that diving for the doorway is the best thing to do in all cases, I think we're gonna have to call this one busted, because that's not always the case.
Exactly. I mean, maybe if you're in an old, unreinforced masonry building, which are very rare in the United States, getting to the doorway is a good idea.
But a better idea is getting out of the building altogether.
Exactly.
And as far as modern buildings built to code, they're probably not gonna collapse anyway.
Which means the current advice of drop, cover, and hold on is your best bet.
That's what I'll be doing.